Hey guys, and welcome back to the second entry in my Japanese improvement vlogs. I guess is what we'll call them, like improvement. Anyway, so a quick recap for those who haven't seen the first video. Basically, I'm some guy who's been learning Japanese off and on for 7 years, but in that time I haven't made as much progress as I'd like. This primarily due to the fact that I have been over my 7 years focusing primarily on fan translation and doing like really intensive immersion. Basically, really going heavy on like Anki flashcards and like mastering something before moving on type attitude. So in this series, I've been documenting my progress in improving my Japanese, but starting with a much right now, I'm starting with a much more extensive learning approach. I might change it as time goes on, but the main idea is to root out my bad habits by doing a very extensive learning, extensive immersion rather than intensive. And just in case you don't know what the difference between intensive and extensive immersion is, in the context of language learning, it's really just talking about depth versus breadth. Intensive immersion, the idea is you really go deep into a smaller amount of immersion content, and you try to learn as much as you can from it before you move on. Whereas in extensive immersion, you are much more relaxed. You just kind of focus on picking up low-hanging fruit, and your intentions are mostly about just like trying to flood your brain with the language, and kind of pick up a lot of the subconscious stuff rather than intentionally try to learn things. And you're also trying to just focus on getting through a lot, so that way you prevent yourself with a wide variety of different content. Again, to kind of build those subconscious structures in your brain. So yeah, I did that for 50 hours with comprehensible input content first, as I talked about in my 50-hour video. And the intention of that was to de-rust, get back into the idea of trying to learn Japanese, and also to fill out my progress tracker and tool of choice for assisting my language learning, which is Migaku. Not sponsored by them, but of course they're always welcome. But yeah, I ended up filling it out with all the common words that I already know. And by the end of that 50 hours, I'd come away with 6,223 words marked as known. And really was really great. I had a newfound confidence in my abilities, both in terms of, it's like, wow, I've already learned all this. Like, there's a lot that I had like kind of in the back of my brain waiting to be reawakened, but just needed, some immersion to like really reactivate like hidden knowledge that I had built up over time. And another thing was that, again, one thing I really talked about in that initial video is that I had this really bad idea in my head of like, I have to deliberately study words to really learn them. Like, there's no notion of me learning words without doing that. But, this extensive immersion approach has really showed me like, no, there's actually a lot you can learn, just from immersion alone, because there's certain things that you'll naturally see over and over again. And that uniqueness, the variety of experience will really help you in learning those words. Because you can grind it in a flashcard, but sometimes just seeing it in a lot of contexts that are meaningful to you, like it does a lot. So yeah, at the end of that video, I said I was going to spend the next 50 hours going away from comprehensible input, like explicit comprehensible input content, and moving on to simple anime. And then at the end, I did that video near the end of the year, near the end of 2025. And the goal was to try to finish that by end of January. Ultimately, I did succeed in doing that, even though I'm recording this video on February 1st, but I did actually finish it on January 31st. I did finish the 50 hours. So now I'm going to kind of, get into it and tell you how that experience went, right? So what did I watch? Well, I watched 125 anime episodes and one movie across 7 different series. And aside from the final series, I took them all just by going through JPDB. Like, JPDB is a website that gives you various stats, and I think it has like built-in or like pre-made flashcard sets for various anime and Japanese media. But I just used it as they have like a ranking of like how difficult anime is. And so I just took like the easiest ones off JPDB's anime database and picked them from there, except for the last one. I'll get to that as it comes up. So what shows did I watch? The first one Had 3 seasons, and I watched all 3 seasons, and even have a movie, and that's the one movie I watched. And it's Karakai Jozu no Takagi-san. You know, it's considered the easiest show of them all on JPDB, and actually, that it makes perfect sense when you watch it. You know, it's a very simple, very repetitive, like romantic comedy anime. I'm not gonna really go too deep into the plots of these shows because it's not really the point. It's not a review of these animes, but you know, Takagi constantly teasing Nishikata over and over and over again, and mostly the same ways over and over again. The show structure makes it so that, like, you see the same vocab over and over and over and over again, and yeah, it becomes really easy to like predict like what's gonna happen next, because I mean sometimes they literally have basically the Nishikata always falls for these pranks basically in the same way, or like a handful of ways every single time. So it's really easy to predict what's going to happen, which really primes your brain to like pick up when like, oh, like I'm expecting that this is going to happen. And so it's likely that he's going to say this, right? And then you see the Japanese for it. It's like, oh, okay, so that's what, yeah, you can easily like go like, that's what he's talking about. Like, if the focus is they're going to, what was it? It's like how many steps to the one of them was like how many they like challenge each other to count how many steps it's going to be to reach like an electric pole, denchu, and so they pointed out a lot of the aspects of the show like deal with like talking about concrete specific things, and they pointed out and you can really see it. So again, they really focus on this denchu, this electric utility pole, and so there's just a lot for you to really grab onto. It's really high context. They what's happening on screen and what is being talked about, there's a really strong correlation with it in this show. So it's really great. Really great for learners. Would highly recommend it if you're somebody that wants to find shows to learn for. Watch shows that help your learning, right? Though I will say, right, that because it's so repetitive, and the show, even for anime rom-com standards, really slow rolls the romantic progression, right? Even at the end, right, like you're still kind of left like, man, like it took them 3 seasons in a movie only to get to this far along in the romantic development between the two characters. Some people may not be able to put up with that, but I'm a pretty big fan of like anime rom-com genre, so I ended up liking it a lot. It's probably like he competes with one other show, and I'll get to it, but my favorite of these shows that I saw. And it was really a really great start. Left a really great impression on me, and I learned a lot. So what came next after Takagi-san? Second show was Bochi Rock, and it's like it was considered the second most difficult on JPDB. But I'll be honest, there must be some calculation, obviously, right, of how this difficulty is done that's like really just focuses on like, okay, this is the vocabulary used in this show, and this vocabulary is like among the most like the frequency of each, like where in the frequency list each of these vocabulary words get used in, or something like these, some sort of weighted average based on that. It's got to be something like that, because it seems like based off like the actual content of this show, and based off of like the pace that characters talk at, and like what they're actually communicating, the show was decently more difficult than Takagi-san. It's probably actually the second most difficult show I watched. Maybe it's because it's the second one I watched and I still hadn't like fully gotten used to watch. Like it was like I had gotten better as time goes on, so this one being the second one like maybe made an impact, but I don't know. It was a little harder. And it's not that the show was difficult. Like obviously this plot, if you know this show, it's not a complicated plot. But it's just that unlike Takagi-san, where I was understanding like 95+%, this was like more like a 75-85% comprehension. Like I understood the general plot, but there was a lot of very particular like what I got all the plot points, but like what characters were saying exactly at every single point. Like there's many points where it's like, yeah, I get the vibes of what they were generally saying, but I didn't actually get what they were fully saying. It was a lot of that, right? And I mean, honestly, some of this could also be that like There's certain domains, right, that I'm very familiar with. I have a lot of immersion experience in rom-com type stuff. Obviously, having translated Rogaku no Otosai, like there's a lot of rom-com and kind of slice of life, like school setting kind of shows that obviously I'm gonna know a lot about, and Takagi-san fit very well within that. Bocchi the Rock fits decently okay with that because it's still like relatively slice of lifey, like anime standard high school girls type show. But it focuses a lot on music. It focuses a lot on um, the kind of feelings Bocchi is going through and stuff like that. Um, and so those kind of topics maybe helped in me not understanding every single line as well. But yeah, as for my overall opinions of the show, I mean, like I said, Takagi-san was great. I know the show is like Bocchi the Rock is really popular. It was like the most popular show, or one of the most popular shows when it aired. Right. I fortunately I'm gonna have to say that the show was just okay for me. I was not. I think okay is probably downselling it. Like I enjoyed it, but I don't think I enjoyed it as much as other people did. Um, I think largely like when it comes to this kind of show, how much you like it and like the main appeal of it is like a lot of people I think related with Hitori very well. The character that Bocchi, the main character, right? Bocchi, her nickname, right? But Hitori is her actual name. But anyway, it's like if you relate with her and her kind of like social anxiety type feelings and stuff, I think people really like that for that. But personally, I didn't really care. I'm not gonna get into like the details of that because it's kind of just not the point. But yeah, like it just some people really like that. I didn't really care that much about it. But the show is definitely good. I don't know if I'd recommend it for learning unless you would like the show. Like if you would like the show and you like music and you like what the show's about, then certainly go ahead. But like just as like a show for learning, just based off of the Japanese content, I think it is a little more difficult and probably not recommended for beginners or early learners or whatever you want to call me, where I'm like somewhat more advanced, but I don't have a lot of extensive immersion experience, right? So, but that's what it was. Third show was Watashi ni Tenshi ga Mai Orita, which is usually shortened to and referred to as just Wataten. This show had a pretty good OP and ED. I have actually, my main exposure to the show prior to watching it is that there's a really funny and really like kind of honestly way better than it should be remix of the OP by this channel called Triple Q. And I really like that song. So I really like the OP, and I thought the ED was good. And I think the show is kind of cute. Like the character designs are really cute, and like kind of it's like really moe, right? And it's like kind of moe to the point of being kind of moe slop in some sense. It's like it's just purely like a moe show. But it doesn't really have a lot of substance, and I think some people will be kind of put off by the fact that the main character is kind of weird. Um, I didn't really care that much about that, but like, it doesn't have a lot of substance to it. Honestly, it's a pretty like whatever generic plot show, and it's probably the least favorite of the shows I watched because of that. Didn't hate it. I don't think I actively disliked any of the shows I watched. If that had happened, I would have just stopped watching it. But it was good enough to finish. But there is a movie for this show, but I didn't watch it because it wasn't good enough. Although I did watch the OVA for it, so I want not actively hating it, but I didn't like it that much. Um, Though I will have to say that as far as learning content goes, this show was actually pretty good. It wasn't as good as Takagi-san. Takagi-san, I think, is like honestly, Takagi-san is like this show isn't made for learners. Like this show wasn't made with learners in mind. Like Takagi-san feels like a show that you would make to teach people Japanese. Wataten isn't that level, but Wataten being like a show that revolves around like elementary school girls and revolves around being super moe's, cute stuff and very basic. It does end up actually being pretty good learning content because the content is really simple and the characters use pretty simple vocabulary. So it's really good for that. But ultimately, yeah, I have to say, like, unless you're really into the moe it's not going to be super enjoyable. And of course, the main character might be somewhat off-putting. So yeah. Then after that, fourth show was Mitsubishi Colors. And Mitsubishi Colors was actually a hidden gem. Like, I had no idea what the show was going into it. Like, the prior three shows I had some familiarity with. But this show I had no idea what it even was. And this show was a hidden gem. It was awesome. Honestly, competes with Takagi-san as my favorite. Ultimately, I'd probably say Takagi-san kind of beats it because I think Takagi-san has a little more substance to it. But this show is really funny. It's really charming. The characters are really cute and chaotic and really funny. It's just the character dynamic is really great. Between the main three trio, the Colors, the group called Colors, that they're made up of. There's not a whole lot to really say about it beyond that. Like, just it's a really great show. I'd recommend it. It kind of is still pretty simple slice of life show. It doesn't have a lot of substance, but it's got a lot of charm and heart, as I said. Difficulty wise, it's a little more difficult than Takagi-san and Wataten. But by no means is it really difficult. It's a very straightforward show. So I'd still recommend it for learning, but just not as much as Takagi-san and Wataten. Although Wataten, I think, right, it's like the show is better than Wataten. So like it's probably better in the sense of like you're gonna enjoy it more, and so right, that's a big thing. That's a big thing I definitely learned from watching these shows is how much you enjoy the show is a humongous force multiplier in how much you're able to really pick up stuff. Like shows that are easy but boring are not as good as shows that are more difficult but are like way more entertaining to you. Entertainment is a huge boost to your ability to pick up words. So probably would recommend the show over it actually. But there you go. Fifth show was Hinako Note. I picked these shows just from the JPDB. Up until now, it had been slice of life shows and pretty like not fan servicey. But this show, no, I didn't know when I was going into watching the show that this show is a very fan servicey type show. It's got a lot of sexual moments, and it like really threw me for a loop. Because the show at first kind of comes across as like, oh, it's just like whatever. It's like the same other kind of shows. It's not very fan servicey, but then like in the first episode near the end, they like really just throw you like, I won't really say it because it doesn't, but like it's very like, oh yeah, there's some scenes in this show that are like really, really much, and kind of crazy when it comes to that. And the end cards are all like kind of pin up type drawings of the characters, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it's like as in case you were, just to be aware, it's a fan servicey show. Ultimately, that aside, the show was slightly more challenging and slightly more enjoyable. Wataten kind of has no substance. This show has like slightly more substance, and has slightly better characters, I would say. I guess that depends what your opinion, but like I personally like the characters a little bit more in the show. Especially the character Kuina. She like it's like when I saw that character in some of the scenes that she's in, it's like it feels like she's got to be like either directly inspired by or like cut from the same like archetype and cloth as like Konata from Lucky Star. She kind of looks like her, and she kind of like makes similar facial expressions, and kind of talks in a similar kind of cadence. So it's like, man, it's like, is this character meant to be Konata? But yeah, another thing, right, was that the show's plot revolves a lot about like performing, like being an actor and like doing stage plays and stuff like that. And so as a result, there's a lot of stage and acting related vocabulary that I had picked up from in Rogaku no Tosai, the game I translate. There's like the very first of 7 episodes in that game, called Lucky Lucky Memorial, revolves around doing a stage play. So because of that, like there's a lot of vocab overlap, and I ended up really added to that like kind of feeling of like, man, this feels like Lucky Star. The show's not actually really like Lucky Star at all, but like because of those two things, the character similarities, it ended up feeling all like Lucky Star to me. So I think because of that, I ended up enjoying it decently more than Wataten, but ultimately kind of still just same kind of like moe slop type content. So If you don't mind the fan service in it, or you like the fan service in it, some people, right? Different kinds of anime fans, right? Um, would recommend the show for learning. It's a good show for that. But as a show overall, it's okay. So next up is the sixth show, and this was the last that I picked from JPDB. It was definitely the most unique and most difficult of the shows that I picked, and the show was Kemuri Kusa, which kind of it's very sci-fi and it's like 3D animated. It's a very strange show, a very intriguing show actually too. It definitely had like the most complex plot of all the shows. Like it's unlike the other shows where there's a very basic setting and premise, and then everything is kind of episodic. Like obviously there's like some plot progression, but the show's mostly episodic, and anything that happens at any given moment isn't really that important to the overall plot. This show is like a continuous narrative that takes place across the 12 episodes, and there's a lot of like, if you don't pick up on what this character says one time, like you miss that plot point, right? Kind of stuff. So this show was a lot more complicated. But again, it's again kind of deceptive, right? It's like really high up on the easy rating according to JPDV. But it's actually a really pretty challenging show. It must, again, because like the show uses a very small pool of vocabulary. The vocabulary pool is very small. They reuse a lot of the same words, but there is like, again, a plot and you have to follow it. And one thing that's really difficult about the show is that like all the main characters except for all the main girl characters have very similar names. Like there's Risa, or I don't even remember. They all start with Ri, and there's like they all characters. There's like four group of like clone like little like chibi type characters, like little sister type characters. And there's like four of them, and they all have like the same name, and they all look exactly the same. And it's like, oh my gosh, like trying to pay attention. I don't think you're meant to really remember who's who in that, but like, it's like, man, I would really get confused about what characters they were talking about, because all the characters have very similar names and kind of similar appearance, right? And they're all usually as a group, right? So that it's like they're usually characters are not often being directly addressed in a way where it's like super obvious. It's like, oh, they're talking about that specific character right now. So it was pretty hard to follow, and I don't remember what the names of the characters were because of that. And ultimately, I did appreciate its uniqueness. The fact that it wasn't moe anime and slice of life anime was really a breath of fresh air, right, compared to the other stuff. But yeah, ultimately I didn't follow the plot super well. I do feel like, again, unlike the other shows, where I felt like I really understood everything, and I didn't feel like I really missed out by watching in Japanese as opposed to English, English sub, right? This show, I definitely felt like I missed out on stuff, and it's probably worth me rewatching it maybe in the future, so I can better understand it. Because like I did like it, the show was interesting, but it's hard for me to really assess it because there was a lot that I missed out on in terms of understanding of the plot of it. And it's a pretty unique show. It was really off-putting at first because it was 3D animated, and it was like, man, this kind of feels like I'm watching like some web series or something. And it actually, I think, was a web series prior to being an anime. Kind of felt cheap and weird. But I ended up appreciating that in the end, so it was pretty enjoyable. We'll have to come back to it at some point. The last show, right? Again, I was kind of still tired of Slice of Life by this point, and I had one more. I had like 10 hours left at this point. I had watched about 40 hours of anime content. I was still tired of like moe and stuff, and like the stuff that was coming up on JPDB after that was like Sora no Method and a show called Citrus, which I don't think that these shows are as moe necessarily. I don't know what either of these shows are, so maybe they are very moe and very slice of life, but like maybe they're actually really good shows, so let me know if you know those shows. But nonetheless, I was still kind of just like, I don't want to watch shows like this right now. I want something different. And I also didn't want to have to worry about like, what if I finish watching these shows and I have like a little bit of time left and I have to find something to watch, right? For like a few episodes to reach the 50 hours, right? And I didn't want to have that situation. So I was like, let me just find something really long running, like a long running show to just watch however a ton of episodes of and to just get last 10 hours from that. So what I decided to do was watch original Pokemon, like the very first Pokemon anime, right? Because that has like, depending on what you want to count, like the original series as, like it can range anywhere from like 80 something episodes to like 200, almost 300 episodes for the very, very original series, like where, you have Ash, Misty, Brock, right? So I decided to watch that. And, I watched about 27 episodes of it. So yeah, that was far enough to see like the James, his name is Kojiro in Japanese, the infamous like Beauty in the Beach episode, which is like, that's its English name, but like the episode where they go to the beach and James is like cross dressing as like a large chested bikini wearing character to compete in the beauty contest. That was cut from the English version, so it's pretty great. Wasn't far enough though to see the infamous Pokemon Porygon seizure episode, which I've never seen. I've watched. So this is actually a show that I've watched in the past. I watched the 4Kids version of Pokemon back when I was like 12. Like 28, 27 now. So it's like, man, that's 15 years ago. So yeah, that was a long time ago. But I have watched that show. It is like one of the first animes I've ever watched. Was 4Kids Pokemon. So I was pretty familiar with the show, but obviously having it been so long, I was still didn't remember a lot of details. But yeah, so yeah, when I watched the show, it was really interesting. I'm sorry, I kind of got lost, kind of lost track of where I was going here with this. But it's really interesting when I watched the show because I had watched the 4Kids version, seeing just how different the Japanese version of the show is. Because this show, like, you can really tell, like, maybe more modern Pokemon doesn't have this issue. I would imagine it doesn't. But this first Pokemon show, like, you can really tell the show was not really made with international audiences in mind. Like, it was a Japanese show, and they had to make it work in English, with that kind of localization type attitude at that time of, like, not having Japanese stuff in it. And it must be that if you compare 4Kids version of the show to like the Japanese, it's like probably super different, because there's just so much Japanese cultural stuff and like things like that that's like, yeah, that has to have been different in the dub, I have to imagine. I did watch, 27 episodes was far enough to see the original jelly filled donuts scene, like the not jelly, the one where the Japanese version of it that got translated into jelly filled donuts. So that was fun. And overall, like, I'm just talking about my impression of the show. Like, I did like the show a lot. It's hard. It feels bad to rate it like quality wise compared to the other ones because like I have a bias towards this one because I'm not much of a big Pokemon fan anymore. Like, I haven't played Pokemon in a while, but like I did really like Pokemon when I was 12 and stuff, and when I watched this show, so I have a lot of nostalgia for the original Pokemon anime. But it's a good show. It's a good show. For learning, it is actually a little bit of a more difficult show compared to some of these other shows because while it is made for kids and it is repetitive, the show is, very repetitive. A lot of episodes follow the same plot line. It's very, very repetitive show. They do use more complicated vocabulary a lot of times, and there's a lot of, again, the cultural stuff makes it actually kind of harder to understand. But it's a pretty good show to watch for learners. There's also the fact that like there's a lot of obviously domain specific words in the show, like all the Pokemon names and the names of Pokemon stuff. But I don't think that actually is that hard, especially if you know like the like if you know Pokemon like in English. Like, yes, they're different, but like I think it's not that hard to pick up the different Japanese names of stuff. So yeah, recommended. Pretty good show. And yeah, that brought me to 100 hours. Sorry for that. It's a little disorganized talking about Pokemon. I felt like I was doing good up to that point. But yeah, so At the end of the day, what was the results and what are kind of the takeaways, right? So in the end, I went from 6,223 to 8,853 words marked as known in Anki. So still actually adding a lot of words, but you can tell that the frequency of adding words kind of went down, right? So only added about a third of the words that I added in the first one. So diminishing returns, right? Due to the fact that I already had marked all the super common words, but still made good progress. It should also be noted that a not insignificant number of those words that I added were like sound effects, many like different ways to say the same word, spelled the same word, right? Because of like differences in how these subtitles were written, probably based off of like Pokemon writes a lot of words that in like hiragana, katakana in the subtitles. I don't know where these where my subtitles files come from, but like it probably is because like the show's made for kids, right? So like they write a lot of words in hiragana in the subtitles. So that added a lot of words, and oh my gosh, like especially from Takagi-san, there was so many words that I added that were just different ways of writing laughter and different ways of writing like all the various kind of grunt sounds that people make in Japanese. Like all the sort of just like kind of noises people make in Japanese. Maybe some people wouldn't count those as words to mark as known in like a migaku. I mean, I said Anki, I meant migaku. Words to mark as known in migaku. Maybe they would count those as like ignore, but like I'm just counting everything as known just to make it simple. So yeah, that contributed a lot to it. So probably at least like 100 or 200 come from just that kind of thing. So, but yeah, ultimately, I do think that this 50-hour period did a ton to help fill in the rest of the words that I already knew, but didn't get captured in the first 50 hours. So there was actually a lot of words like I don't is it called I think it's yukigassen, right? Snowball fight. Like that was just like a word that they said in Mitsubishi Colors, because they do a snowball fight, and it was like, man, I hadn't heard that word in forever. I think they use it in Persona 4 as well because of snowball fight, but like that probably had been the last time I'd heard that word in Japanese. So it'd been forever. So there was a lot of like again latent words that like had been in the depths of my brain, that became awoken, right? And really kind of again speaks to the power of extensive immersion, in that extensive immersion can really help like get your brain working in Japanese and really awaken those like words that you thought you forgot, but like actually you knew all along, but like they just had been in the depths of your mind. So yeah, it did a really great job at like again reawakening a lot of my previously obtained vocabulary and filling out the rest of those words that I hadn't again captured in the first 50 hours. Of course, I did also learn a lot of domain-specific words or words that showed up a lot in the anime that I didn't know necessarily before. Words like kata omoi, unrequited love, because in Kagi-san, right, there's a show called 100% kata omoi, which is 100% unrequited love. So that word, this is a word that I've probably seen before. Like they say sanzan a lot in Takagi-san, which means like thoroughly. Like Ishikata constantly describes like him being like sanzan, like thoroughly teased by Takagi, right? I've learned a lot of words like suneru is another word that I kind of stood out to me as a word that like, man, that was a word that I learned that I remember. It showed up a lot in Wataten because like characters like sulk from not getting attention from main character. I forget her name. Because they say words related to again like theater and hinako note. So like gekidan, right? Like theater troupe type words, right? Mitsubishi Colors, they use gaki a lot. It's just like brat type words. Gen 1 Pokemon had a lot of words, like Jolly is fun. Jolly Boy, Jolly Boy, just another word for like brat. That's what they call Ash a lot. Jolly Boy is like a combination of Jolly and then boy, right? But Jolly means like brat. Um, and of course, a lot of Pokemon names, right? Which some people may not really care about that, but like to me, it's like if I want to immerse in more Pokemon stuff, which I definitely want to, knowing the names of the Pokemon and stuff like that is gonna help a lot. Um, I'm also my impressions are still very like I'm still very motivated by the fact that I could understand enough of like again I talked about this a moment ago, but like I'm very motivated by the fact that like aside from Kemurikusa, I felt like I could understand enough of all of these shows to just watch them for the sake of watching them. Like I both enjoyed watching them for learning Japanese, of course, but like I could just watch them as shows and just enjoy them for the show, and that felt really good. I didn't feel like I really missed out on anything significant by watching them in Japanese. And it really kind of reminds me back of when I did anime immersion back when I first learned Japanese. And I really thought of, at that time, I hadn't watched a lot of anime. And when I first started learning, and when I started watching anime, I kind of went into anime with this attitude of like, anime is Japanese. Like, there doesn't exist a non-Japanese way to watch anime, like in my head. Like, I kind of had that mindset. I kind of went in kind of having that kind of mindset to like help me like tolerate the ambiguity. But now it's like I can watch the anime in Japanese with Japanese subtitles, and it doesn't feel like, oh, like I have to tolerate the ambiguity because there's no other way to watch it. It's like, no, I can just watch the show in Japanese and just enjoy it for what it is in Japanese, which is really awesome. Um, you know, it's really exciting because again, I talked about this in the first 50 hours as well, but it's just like I needed to like really force myself to immerse a lot to really just understand and get into my head like dude, like that critical mass, like that critical point where you're just enough, you understand Japanese enough to where there starts to be like a significant amount of Japanese content that you can just watch. And you don't have to worry about like, do I know enough Japanese to be able to actually appreciate it? Like I'm at that point, right? And so I'm at the point where yeah, I can just like enjoy a stuff. And so that's really, really motivating. And I'm excited to just continue to watch like anime beyond this, just to watch it, right? Like that's really awesome. I'm definitely gonna watch more Pokemon. Watch more shows in general, and that's really, really exciting. So, but with that said, right, as far as my progress, and it's part of my future progress, right? And maybe it's just because the last 10 hours was just Pokemon, so it kind of made it this way. But I am noticing that like I am kind of reaching diminishing returns on how much I can pick up just from immersion alone. Like I'm starting to be that the words that I don't know are like, you can't just like they're not just the words that show up 10 million times. Like there are that special category of word where it's like, yeah, like collectively these words show up a lot, like all of them together, but like each one individually doesn't show up very much. So it's that tricky part, right? And so with those words, it's definitely kind of starting to feel like, yeah, to learn those, I'm gonna probably really have to like do at least some deliberate studying or place some more focus on these words in order to continue to make significant progress. I can't just like passively pick up those words. Or at least it'll be a lot harder to do so. Um, I did say in the 50-hour video that I would try to do like make flashcards for words, like in a very controlled manner, in a very like limited manner. In the end, I didn't actually make any flashcards because again, I wanted to continue to see just how much I could pick up without having to make flashcards. Because again, flashcards were a huge issue for me, so I needed to really avoid them. Um, and so yeah, I didn't make any flashcards. Um, and honestly, I'm probably still gonna try to avoid them for the next 50-hour period just to continue to like push my limits. But I am starting to see like, yeah, there's gonna come a point where flashcards are gonna be the best path forward to really like pick up some of these more difficult words, or less frequent words, but for less frequent but still important to learn words. Um, Another thing to keep in mind as I go forward is that I talked about this again in the 50-hour video, but I continue to have some doubts about how much I really know some of these words that I've marked as known. Because again, I'm going mostly off vibes. Like I don't have like the flashcard like Anki like retention like review intervals to go off of for like how well I know a word. I'm mostly just kind of going off vibes. So there's probably a lot of words that I'm marking as known because I really understood that word in the context that it showed up in. But then like if I were to see this word in a different context, like I wouldn't be able to remember what it means. Um, I do think it's ultimately for the best that I'm not getting too hung up and I'm just kind of adding words based off vibes. So that way I don't, you know, stress out about it too much. Again, as I talked about, it's not necessarily important always to know every word super well. You don't have to know every word super well, right? Some words it's okay that you can just recognize them when they show up, but you could never actively use them in your own speech or something like that. Like that's okay, right? So I kind of have conflicting feelings about that, but and of course, if a word shows up, and it's one of those cases of like I thought I knew it, but it turns out I don't know it as well as I thought I did. It's always important to remember that like, look, you can just mark it as unknown again and just deliberately study it if you need to, right? So, but I am keeping in mind that like there might need to be some words that I really do actually need to do that for, because I don't actually know them that well, and I don't want to. If I want to learn them, I need to study them potentially. Um, so that's kind of my thoughts. What's next, right? What comes next? What's the next 50-hour period? Right? In this next 50 hours, I really do want to try to address those concerns I just talked about, the running out of low-hanging fruit kind of idea, the feelings that maybe there's some words that I don't know as well as I think I do. So I think the best remedy to both of those problems is to move towards something a little bit more intensive as opposed to extensive. I still want to keep extensive as the focus, but we're going to move a little bit in the direction of intensive immersion by doing reading. And not just any reading. We're going to do reading from games, reading from easy games. And I'm going to start with the Switch remake of Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door in Japanese. It might include other games, but we'll have to see. Like TTYD is a pretty long game. It might actually take up the full 50 hours to do it. Just that game. But we'll see how it goes. It might include other games. So easy reading and the reason why I'm doing TTYD is because again, I'm trying to kind of like move in the direction of intense, but like kind of keep things easy, trying to ease my way into it. Cause I know that, sticking with easy, but like has helped me a lot, in learning like the new words that show up. So, the reason for starting with that game is because it has hiragana. I won't be able to use Migaku with TTYD because it's, you can't hook in Migaku to a Switch game, right? It doesn't work that way. So having hiragana will help with looking up words and things like that, and easing my way into reading again. The game also has a lot of varied dialogue that's fairly standalone, right? It's not like a game where, you have to read all of the dialogue, and if you miss a detail that gets pointed out in one place, like you completely lost the plot type thing. It's a very forgiving game. Like the game's dialogue is again mostly standalone. It's a lot of NPC dialogue, right? Characters saying things that you don't have to really. It's a lot of dialogue where you don't need to. It's okay if you don't fully understand what it says, right? So, it also is a game, of course, that I'm very familiar with its English script. I played TTYD a lot growing up in English, so I'm very familiar with how things are in English and what characters are saying. So that'll help a lot with comprehension. But it's going to really challenge me because I don't have Migaku hooked into it, and because, I can go at my own pace reading-wise. It'll allow me to put some more focus on words that I don't know. Like I have to... And it also forced me to like think more about what characters are saying, because you're not going to have as much visual context for everything, and tone of voice, right? You're not going to have that either. So there's going to be less context. I'll have to think more about what's being said, and it's also going to, again, the lack of Migaku is going to challenge me to see how much I really remember, how many words I actually really know. So it's going to be a good like kind of course correction, good knowledge check. And so I'm really excited to doing that. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door is a game that I've wanted to play in Japanese for a long time. It was one of the first things I tried to do in Japanese, like tried to use my Japanese for. Way back in the day, I did a live stream like on my channel, like 7 weeks into learning Japanese to try to play TTYD in Japanese, and it went terribly. So I even did a stream somewhat more recently, and it went a lot better, but it didn't go as well as I would have hoped. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how well it goes, and how much I can get out of it. And yeah, this more intensive approach, I'm gonna, of course, be really careful to not fall into my old patterns, and get really hung up on stuff. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Though with that said, again, because okay, I'm kind of talking in circles. Sorry guys, these videos are just recorded off the cuff, and I just have an outline. There is the question, of course, of what counts as 50 hours. With video content, it was easy because I can just add up the lengths of the videos that I watched, right? And count that as how long I watched, how much stuff I watched. With a game like this, it's not going to be so easy to do that. But my plan is to just use like a stopwatch and like on my phone or whatever, and just only add up time when I'm like in dialogue and I'm reading dialogue, because obviously TTYD is a game that isn't just dialogue, it has gameplay and stuff like that. So we don't want to count that. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's my plan for the next 50 hours. Again, apologize for the ranting and going kind of long. Like, man, I thought this was going to be a lot shorter, and I guess it is. It's like 45 minutes now. But still took a long time to talk through all this. Again, my thoughts are a little kind of a mess, kind of unorganized, but that's how it is, right? It's just a vlog. Hopefully this video was enjoyable. If not, sorry. And yeah, I'll be back with a 150-hour update in about a month. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all next time.